I think there's probably going to be a little more discussion on this one.
I think you might.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, a little background on how we got to where we are today. Last September, I was dove hunting with former Senator Robert Barham, and he brought up this to me, and he said, "Hey, Senator, you know that there is an ad valorem tax on the books dealing with rail cars where 100% of the tax revenue goes to EBR." I'm going to be honest with y'all, I didn't believe him. I was like, there's no way. Or if it does, it's just a very small amount of money. I got with staff, we did some research, and Senator Barham, former Senator Barham, was in fact correct. And for the last 47 years, 100% of the ad valorem taxes on rail cars where there is no nexus, these are companies that do not have an office in this state, regardless of where the car is, 100% of the ad valorem taxes are going to East Baton Rouge. And so all this legislation does is seeks to spread it around the state equitably, based on the amount of rail that each parish has. I've given all of you a spreadsheet to show the impact to each of your local parishes, and how much your local parishes can expect to receive roughly based on last year's calculation. I do think that we have an amendment. The first one, the one from the Tax Commission.
Okay. Which one is that? You want to, Danielle, you want to take that?
All right. It's this one, right?
767.
684. Okay, it's amendment set 684. And what the amendments do is lay out the methodology. The Tax Commission will promulgate rules to establish the allocation methodology for implementation. And it says that the Tax Commission, in setting that allocation methodology, will consider the miles of all company track and rolling stock within parishes compared to the total amount of miles of company track and rolling stock within Louisiana. They will annually report the amount of total assessed value to each parish, subject to the provisions of this allocation paragraph. And each paragraph will annually prepare a tax bill for the amount of the assessed value allocated to that parish by the Tax Commission, and shall send a copy of their tax bill to the East Baton Rouge Parish within 14 days after their rolls are certified. Failure to provide that to East Baton Rouge Parish may result in forfeiture of the taxes due. East Baton Rouge Parish will then send a single tax bill to each taxpayer that is inclusive of the total amount to be remitted to all Louisiana parishes. And for that work, East Baton Rouge Parish will, and they'll annually remit the taxes collected by the parish. I apologize. And make other technical corrections.
Right. And there is a 1% fee.
Correct, that's what I was gonna
which is
say.
in line with the fee that we've put in place on the remote sellers commission to allocate those dollars. And so there is revenue there for the parish to remit those taxes back.
All right. The board is clear.
Do I need to offer this amendment technically?
Yeah, there's no question. Senator Bowie, on the amendment or on the bill?
On the amendment.
On the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Cathey, with this amendment, how does this impact your effective date of the bill? For instance, the effective
doesn't.
date was January of this year.
It doesn't.
So you believe all of these entities will
Absolutely.
be able to do that
Absolutely.
in a timely manner to implement for this year?
Yes, sir.
You've checked with them to see?
Yes. We have worked with the tax commission hand in hand on this. Absolutely. This will not impact.
Including the amendments?
Yes. These amendments came from the tax commission. That's who helped us author these amendments.
And my question is, have you checked with the parishes that will be involved to see if they can do this in a timely manner, given your effective date?
No, I haven't. But they absolutely can't. There's no way that they can't. And I know they're going to come to the table and say that they can't. That's 100% false.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all.
No problem. Okay. Who offers the amendment?
I'll offer
Senator Reese offers the amendment. Is there any objection to the amendment? Hearing none, Amendment 684 is adopted. Back on the bill. There are no questions. Let's get to the opposition then. Senator White, did you wish to speak?
I think there's some other speakers before me, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, you're the senator. I'm taking you first. I'll call you up. This ought to be interesting. Mayor President Sharon Weston Broom. Why don't you all both come down and... Oh, Cleo also?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Got Senator Barrow as well.
Well, you don't need to fill out a card. Why don't y'all three? If you don't mind, I'm going to let the former senator, ladies first, as always here. Sharon, great to see you.
Good to see you as well, Mr. Chair, and to the members of this esteemed committee. I'm here with my colleague, Senator White, and Senator Fields, and I think we have some other colleagues from East Baton Rouge Parish, Senator Regina Barrow, to discuss the Senate Bill 193 and to certainly weigh in our opposition to this bill. The allocation of assessed values for movable property, of course, of a non-resident barge, line, or towing company has been in the law since 1976. I just heard the author's motivation for bringing the bill forward. But what I think is very critical, among many other things, is that the fiscal impact to East Baton Rouge Parish would be $7.5 million, which includes a $3.5 million to our school board system, and I think there are some members here, as well as $1.5 million to the sheriff's department, and I think any parish would be at the table with the concern of that impact. This change is also complicated and cumbersome to administer, and yes, East Baton Rouge is required to do it for no greater than 1% of the sums paid. The change may not approximate the location of any taxable barge and towing company property. I know you're up against the clock, so I'm going to yield to my colleagues to the right and left of me.
Okay, I didn't realize, did you want to speak?
I'm gonna speak, yes.
You want to go after? Yeah, I could call you up now. We always do ladies first here.
Yeah, I'll move.
No, Cleo is already. Regina, I apologize. I didn't realize you were here to
No
speak.
problem, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And thank you, members. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to come and speak. Certainly, this bill, in my opinion, is one that does not bring our state to a good point. And I do understand, I guess, to some degree, Senator Cathey rationale in terms of why he may be bringing the bill, but what would have been even better if he would have spoke with us, especially as colleagues, so we could have talked about this and figure out how and why, because none of us were here when this was actually created. In talking with Mr. Carmichael, he informed me that he had attempted to meet with Senator Cathey about this bill, and that they are not in favor of this, that this is going to cause a huge hiccup for the rail industry. As he stated, they are in unincorporated, and these are rail companies across the country, and they chose, after the Constitution, to make Baton Rouge the hub, so they would have a centralized location in terms of how this business would transact. By separating this out, it's going to cause a huge problem for the rail company to be able to do that. In addition to taking away money from our school system, our elderly, our police department, and the list goes on. I just spoke with the Council on Aging, and this impact to the council on agent is going to be 87,000 meals, which is enough to feed seniors for a year. And so certainly we could have talked about this. We could have probably came up with a mechanism that if we wanted to unwind this, we could have done it in a way that it would not be harmful overnight, but this would be devastating to the city of Baton Rouge. The next thing that I want to say is, because we are the centralized place of government, there are a lot of things that we actually take on and actually are tasked with and are paying for the rest of the state. And I would think that this is not a road that we want to go down, because if one part of the state suffers, then guess what? We all suffer. Right now, in the judicial court, it's my understanding that when some cases are presented in court, when the parishes are unable to pay, or if they don't pay up front, supposed to pay on the back end, sometimes that doesn't happen. Well, guess who eats that cost? East Baton Rouge Parish. And so, again, when we start talking about fairness, parity, there's a lot of things to take into consideration. And when you look at the amount of money that each area can properly get, that's the other thing that Mr. Mark Carmichael said. There was no formula to this, which is one of the things he wanted to talk about. When you start talking about the amount of money that each area is going to get, some of it is not going to be worth the cost that it may cost them down the line. So I just wanted to put that on the record. I would hope that in the future, that as we begin to take on bills that impacts each other's district, that we would at least have the common courtesy to talk to each other, because certainly I would not have introduced a bill that would have taken that kind of money away from his area. And so with that in mind, I hope y'all would take that into consideration. Hopefully we can delay this, we can talk about it, and come up with a better system or a better process to look at this measure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator White?
Thank you. I'll just kind of reiterate some of those things. I understand this. I do understand it. I mean, there's dollars in the budget. I used to make a living when I was in the House finding dollars that had been there for years and nobody had spent them. And I could find them, and I'd go to the Speaker and say, if I find some money, or I'd go to the Governor and say, if I find some money, can I have it? Well, every once in a while it'd be a lot of money, so I didn't get it. I had to divide it up. So every once in a while, a little chump change, I'd get it. But I was very good at scouring the books. And evidently that's what he did. But and I'll just reiterate, Senator Cathey knows me, knows where I sit. He has no trouble finding me when he wants an appropriation for his area and asks me to give money to Monroe. He has no trouble finding me. But this is not a few dollars. This is $7.5 million. And it'll affect our transportation. It'll affect the elderly. It'll affect a lot of areas in our parish. You say it's a big old parish. It is. But I mean, things are tight. I just had a bill that I dropped because I was going to make areas start paying their court costs. And they asked me not to do it because it would be hard on some of those areas. So we'll eat those costs, and we'll continue to eat those costs. Is that fair? I don't think it's fair, but as being the capital city, that's just one of the things you have to do sometimes. But with this, I think this is a situation where don't punish us for being the capital city and say that's Baton Rouge, they can eat it. Don't punish us for that. And I don't think that's fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Fields?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I don't think, as I can recall, I've ever actually sat at a table speaking against one of my colleagues' bill
Never mind.
in a committee. But this is important. I mean, Baton Rouge would lose $7.5 million, and Baton Rouge is the center of the state. It is the capital of the state, rather. When one files a lawsuit against the state, it must be filed in the 19 JDC. I mean, our courts receives every suit that's filed against the state. The state doesn't have to pay costs until the end. Many times they don't. For those of you who serve on finance, you already know that the state owes the 19 JDC like tens of millions of dollars. Look, I appreciate Senator Cathey, and I served with Senator Barnes. But at the end of the day, this is not the way to do it, and I would urge my colleagues to at the very least, delay a vote on this until we can really wrap our arms around it. I heard from the mayor's office last night, and I had no intentions of coming here today. I didn't know that the bill exists, but I appreciate what the senator is attempting to do. I would just beg of the committee not to move this bill out of committee today.
Okay. Question from Senator Connick.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of my questions have been answered by Senator Barrow, White, and Senator Fields. Jefferson Parish, if we take that away from you, can get $225,000. But I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think what happens in Baton Rouge affects the entire state, and you're right when you file a court a state action, you go to the 19th JDC. How would $7.7 million affect your budget today, Ms. Mayor?
Well, as I said, Senator, it would definitely impact various areas of this entire parish, including the sheriff's department, the school system, and my assistant finance director is here and can give you a breakdown specifically of our budget, the impact the deficit would have on our budget. But as you know, as the mayor and the parish president, I have to look out for everything that impacts the parish, certainly the city of Baton Rouge, but also I'm concerned about our sheriff's department. I'm concerned about our school system. I'm concerned about our council on aging. But I'm going to ask Angie Savoy, who has the numbers at hand, to share specifically about the city of Baton Rouge.
Thank you all for allowing us to speak. As the mayor said, we are...
State your name for the record, please.
I'm sorry. Angie Savoy, Assistant Finance Director. Thank you. Thank you again for allowing us to speak on this item. As the mayor stated, we are East Baton Rouge Parish, and we do service a lot of community areas for the general fund, for Council on Aging, the mental health, East EMS, and the parish library. It's a total of $1.6 million just for the money that we have control over. The sheriff is here to speak on their fiscal impact. As we mentioned earlier, with Council on Aging, it's a number of meals. This would be extremely detrimental to the library, which provides a lot of community service activities for the community. The parish general fund, which funds our general fund, which is maintenance, does fund the court systems, street, roads. It's a majority of our services are for public services that we provide the citizens.
So this loss of revenue has not been budgeted, correct?
Oh, it's budgeted, yes, sir.
I mean, but losing this,
Impact our budget.
Yes, it would impact our budget, $1.6 million
For the city.
for the city.
for the East,
All right. I got it. Thank you. So.
Okay. Senator Pope for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the young lady just answered most of my questions, which will expedite this process. I do understand that looking at the handout that I got, that Livingston Parish is scheduled to get $71,000. Having conversation with those people and trying to be a good neighbor, they're more than willing to forego that $71,000 for the East Baton Rouge Parish because of the attitude that we feel like that this is probably not the right time to do anything like this, and we do want to be good neighbors to East Baton Rouge. Also, I represent part of East Baton Rouge Parish as well. I do have a question. How would this money be distributed if, in fact, this piece of legislation were to be passed? For you, Mayor, or, well, you can answer.
So currently, we do not have the mechanism to distribute that. We put it in our fiscal note. We did try to do a conservative, which estimate administratively it would take about 8 personnel, and we assumed that 5% of their annual time would be spent on reconciling, distribution, issuing payments, and that equated to about $130,000, which to be honest with you, we still feel like we're selling ourselves short on that. And so that was a little more than the 1% that's being proposed.
That was my question.
And just to make another point is, we are not the distributors of ad valorem taxes as of today. That is
that's my
administered
second
by the
question.
sheriff. Yes, sir.
Okay. So who's going to distribute those ad valorem taxes?
The way it's proposed, it's saying the parish. And so this would be something new, and we don't honestly have the capacity, to administer this.
So based on that, you don't feel like at this point in time, even if you thought it was a great idea, you wouldn't be able to implement it?
Absolutely. We agree.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Reese for a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this is a question maybe for you, but so out of the total 7.7 million annual total, obviously if we implemented this, East Baton Rouge would still retain their share of that, right, based on the formula that's in the bill. So it's the total impact East Baton Rouge would not be the whole 7.7 because they would still get a retention of that as well. Do we know what that amount is? And that may not be a good question.
The fiscal note that was prepared by the legislative auditors said that we would retain about $250,000, but we cannot validate that.
Okay.
And Senator, if I may, I have not even seen this allocation distribution that has been given to the senators this morning. I have no idea what it says or the impact.
Thank you. The other question I had is the totals that you referenced a minute ago for the various agencies. Can you represent that as a percent of their budget?
You mean the sheriff's department and the school board?
Right. So the total dollar value that she said impacted like elderly affairs or impacted those other agencies. What is the impact as a percent of their total budget? Do we have that number?
I do not have that.
If I could intervene, they have their own fiscal people here this morning to share that information.
I just wondered if we were talking about 50% or we were talking about 0.1% or what the...
We're going to call them up.
And we can save that for later. If somebody comes to the table and has that data, I'm just curious at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Question from Senator Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that I can do the math, but I do have some figures that the East Baton Rouge Parish government budget is in excess of $1 billion.
That is true, but our budget, most of it is dedicated, and Angie can speak to that, because people always say that to us thinking we have this plethora of dollars, but most of that money is already dedicated funding.
How's it?
You know, like it is around here a lot as well.
Right. I like to undedicate things personally, but be that as it may.
Some of our stuff is statutory, but Angie, could you share that?
Yes. So the general operations is about $320 million, and that is where we have our discretionary funds that are used to provide police, fire, EMS, services, transportation and drainage, general government. The rest are our dedicated taxes.
I see. Dedicated by?
Sewer, like our sewer system.
I got you. So your general your general fund is $300 million?
Yes, sir.
And I would also say, Senator, that several years ago we passed one of the largest infrastructure projects in the city, and that is in the parish, and that's dedicated as well. And that has inflated, of course, that $1 billion number as well.
That's our MOVE-BR transportation program.
Yeah, in our area we've experienced inflation as well, and our local governments are stressed as well. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, the board is clear. Thank y'all for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
I'm sorry. Senator McMath.
I'm sorry for the late push. Well, this is awkward as awkward gets. Senator Cathey, I haven't been here very long, but I want to thank you for again blazing a trail. I've got a feeling this doesn't happen very often. I do have, in all seriousness, I do have one question. If anyone at this table or Senator Cathey or anyone else in the audience can answer this just from a background standpoint, what was the rationale when this was put in place however long ago, the rationale behind.
I have asked that. Nobody knows. It's been 50 years. None of us were around.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes,
we can ask.
Francis,
We can ask Francis Thompson, I guess.
With Francis.
I don't know who else may know.
Okay. Well, I'd
I
love
would
to.
think it would be some kind of offset
Yeah.
to some other kind of agreement in the parish or with other parishes, but it had to be some kind of offset.
Well,
You
it's
just
my.
say Baton Rouge, you take this money. It had to be some kind of offset deal.
Okay. I'd love to be able to try to. Now I'm very curious. I'd love to try to answer that. So,
I
if
would too.
this moves forward, but okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay. All right, the board is clear, thank y'all. So also, Leslie Richard Chambers will provide is opposed, but will provide information if requested. So let's call to the table those that would like to speak. Skip, is it Romer? East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office, Darius Lannis. Correct. East Baton Rouge Parish School System, you put 2 cords in. And Kelly Lopez, East Baton Rouge School Board. Would y'all all 3 come to the table, please? As is our usual custom, ladies first. State your name for the record.
Kelly Lopez. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the East Baton Rouge Parish School System.
Okay.
So the effect that this would have on our school district would be approximately $3.5 million. That is 2% of our property taxes, which make up 37% of our general fund budget. While that doesn't seem like a lot of money, $3.4 million, $3.5 million would pay for approximately 52 teachers. As the second largest district in the state, 52 teachers can touch a lot of children's lives. That's an entire school of teachers, and that would be a significant impact to the district.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Darius Lannis, East Baton Rouge Parish School Board President. I think Ms. Kelly Lopez gave excellent layout of how that impacts our current school district. If you look at the course of where we have been over the last year, we had about 200 vacancies inside of our system. When you look at how it's going to impact us moving forward, 52 full-time positions will absolutely devastate our system if we lose those dollars. Now, I heard Senator Koenig bring up Jefferson Parish. Now, I bring this up because in Jefferson Parish right now, they're crunching their budget to the tune that they now have to consolidate schools, and this is the largest school district in the entire state. I heard Senator Pope bring up Livingston Parish. Well, they didn't pass their propositions, and now they have to close their schools down earlier than anticipated because they have serious budgetary constraints. The last thing we want to see happen inside of the capital area city is that we're so budget constrained that we cannot take care of the people who we need to take care of. So when I tell you this is absolutely going to affect us, it absolutely will. When you talk about crime inside of our city and how it's going to affect our sheriff's department, well, you see what the effects of what's happening right now. And the mayor is making every opportunity and every step lock and key with our school system to ensure that we have safe schools. So how does this impact us now? Well, if you don't have teachers inside of schools, we have to go out and get full-time subs. When we have full-time subs, it has shown that our declines inside of our schools have exacerbated when you also include what happened with COVID. When that happens, students are not coming to school, and when students are not coming to schools, crime is going to increase. And we don't want to see that happens across our parish nor across our state. So we're asking you please to take this into serious consideration today.
Okay. Skip.
I'm Skip Rohr with the Chief Civil Deputy for the Sheriff's Office, and a reduction of $1.5 million would be about 1.7% of our budget, and it would affect having to lay off 18 full-time deputy positions would affect the enforcement of the parish.
Okay. The board is clear. Thank you for your testimony. Senator Koenig, would you read the rest of the cards in opposition?
All right. Carla Powell, Vice President of East Baton Rouge School Board, in opposition. Bud Corson and Jim Nickel, City of Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge, in opposition. David Zoller, BRAC, in opposition. Rodney Braxton, Southern Strategy Group, East Baton Rouge School Board, in opposition. Patrick Martin, East Baton Rouge School Board in opposition. Kevin Cunningham, East Baton Rouge School Board in opposition. And Brian Wilson, East Baton Rouge Assessor in opposition.
Okay, and late card from Franklin Foyle. Senator Foyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for being late. I had another engagement scheduled, but I'll make this really quick. I just learned about this bill last week from our Sheriff's Department. I did reach out to Senator Cathey to try to find out what was going on, what the background was. Have not had a chance to really understand why he's trying to do this and what he's trying to do. It is a big hit for East Baton Rouge Parish, which has been receiving these funds for a long time now. I would ask that this committee, at the very least, defer this bill for a week or two to allow us to all get together and speak, along with our mayor president, and meet with Senator Cathey to see if we can come up with a resolution. I still don't know enough about the bill at this point, so that's my request to the committee, is if you would put this bill off and bring it back if you think that's necessary in a week or two. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No problem. Thank you, Senator Foyle. Senator Cathey?
Thanks. Let me first address a couple of misstatements during the testimony. And you know, first, this is not personal. This is not an attempt to go after any entity or body, number one. Two, this legislation will have no impact on industry. They're still going to be remitting one check. They're still going to be getting one bill. It's not going to impact their taxing processes. That was the most important thing to me as we walked through the process with staff, is that we don't want to change that, number one. Two, this represents a 0.45%. I know we love that number, 0.45, around this building, but this is 0.45% of the East Baton Rouge Parish government budget. The fact that we have been told that this is going, and when I say 0.45%, that's the $300 million that they just came and said. The fact that we've been led to believe through testimony here that we're going to be all of a sudden like kicking puppies and drowning children is absolutely ludicrous. The other thing that I will say is that this is not taking from East Baton Rouge Parish. This is equitably sharing revenue that I feel that everyone in the state should have access to. And let me give you a scenario, as I have told several of you. Senator Connick, as you said, that Jefferson Parish doesn't need the $200,000. Well, if a train derails in Jefferson Parish, the East Baton Rouge Parish government's not coming to clean up the debris. Jefferson Parish is. The sheriff of East Baton Rouge Parish isn't coming to secure the site. Joe LaPinto is. So the fact that we're going to say that we can do without these funds, if there's an issue on the rails, your local government is who's going to be called on to provide those services. I don't think that it's out of line to ask for local government to have access to some of these dollars. With that, I'll ask for favorable passage.
He was on closing.
Would you
take?
Yeah, absolutely.
Take a question from Senator Connick.
Just to respond, Senator. Listen, I appreciate what you're doing, but I think the communication between yourself, the bill, and the government administration of East Baton Rouge Parish is lacking, and I think that needs to be discussed a little bit better than what was done. To me, I won't say again blindsided, but they just learning about this a week ago, and I think it's better for the parties to talk and see if it's possible or can be agreed to or something. That's all I'm saying.
Right. So, and what I would say is that this bill was drafted well before the filing deadline. It's been in the system for weeks. And I'm going to respectfully, we're just going to have to agree to disagree that, I mean, do you call every entity that's impacted by any piece of legislation that you file? Yes. I mean, do you? I've talked to several other members, like, I'm not calling people to tell them that, hey, I've got something that's going to impact you. And so, I mean, I think that's why they have the lobbyists and the representation that they do to review bills to find out if there is an impact.
a comment by Senator Luna?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So nobody wants to take their bill and push it back a week. We know what the intent of that is. However, I think that in interest of your bill, to give these folks a say and a fair chance at it, maybe what we need to do is push it back 1 week, and then let's come back in. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm just gonna be real honest with y'all about my concerns. I understand it'll affect East Baton Rouge Parish. I get it. But you know who else it's gonna affect? It's gonna send $250,000 to Grant Parish, one of the poorest parishes in the state. And that's a huge deal for them. They got a lot of train tracks there. They have to put up with all the issues of it. Up at Red Rock and up in Jonesboro, we got all kind of rail issues up there, and the parish doesn't have any money to pay for the issues. I mean, that's $37,000 annually. We have to consider those things too, and I understand, I get it, but what I'd like for you to do, Senator Cathey, is let's bump this for a week and see if we can work on it a little bit. Maybe look at implementing it later or something, just something along those lines.
Yep. So look, I will do that. I'm still going to push the bill, and I will push it a week. Again, and I'm going to tell you why. And I told the representation that called me yesterday why I was against that, and it's because I got screwed last year trying to work with people pushing legislation a week. And so, but I am willing, in the interest of the request of this committee, I'm still going to push the bill.
And I understand that. And look, and I guarantee you, I give you my word right now, I'm not trying to kill your bill by pushing it back a week. I really want to see if there's some way that we can work out something on this. My district needs this money.
Right.
Just the truth of the matter.
And
very poor district, it means huge things for them.
Sure. No, it means a lot to the rest of the state. And to answer Senator McMath's question about why this legislation or why this was put into statute, I've got a couple of just ways that I think about it in my head. I think one, probably in 1976, because of the economy and technology and things like that, there wasn't the ability to have remote work as much as there is. So there was probably every company had rail car, or they had a nexus somewhere in this state. They had an office somewhere. The other thing I can think is that probably, as we've seen today through the testimony of my colleagues, the Baton Rouge lobby is strong in this building. And so I'm sure that there was some of that. But again, just because in 1976, 47 years ago, it was done doesn't mean that it's right today. And so that's all I'm trying to do, is to right a wrong that was done 47 years ago. So anyway, I look forward to seeing y'all next week, and we'll pass it out then. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Cathey.
Senator Cathey, would you like personal privilege?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, each year we author legislation in this building that one way or the other we are all very passionate about. Just as you all are passionate about your issues, I am passionate about mine. However, there is a way to handle those issues. This morning outside of committee, because of my passion, I may have gotten a little aggressive with one of my colleagues. For that, I apologize. Senator Barrow, outside of committee, I may have been a little aggressive, and for that, I do sincerely apologize. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Barrow, would you like personal privilege?
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Members, it's really ironic that today we would be celebrating and acknowledging our former members who have served. And certainly I've heard how when they have had disagreements, how they have handled those disagreements, and very often they have always done them in a very civil manner. And so today, what occurred with me, I've never had since I've been here in the Senate or in the House. I've been serving for 18 years. And when I came in the chambers, Senator Cathey asked me if he could speak to me to apologize. I will accept his apology, but I do want to state this because it was almost insulting to me when he said that I was a little disrespectful. That was not a little disrespectful. Being a woman here and putting your finger in somebody's face and cursing them is not a little disrespectful. Certainly we all are passionate. I'm passionate about a lot of issues. I've been very passionate about a lot of issues. But I have never been derogatory to anyone serving in this body. I would hope going forward that we do not allow our personalities or to allow anger or whatever you may want to call it to treat each other in a disrespectful manner. There were many people that were standing in the hall that saw this account, including my former mayor, who was here, and she said, "May we have some decorum, please?" And then she went on to say, "I've never seen anything like this. What is going on?" And I will say to you that hearing her voice refrained my next action that I had contemplated. So again, we all have duties, responsibilities to the people that we serve. The issue that he brought up, I think it's one that deserves discussion, but the way that we handle it is a way that we should all look to handle our business as we represent not just yourself, the people of this state, and those who are watching. There are a lot of young people watching us too. You never know who's watching and who we are a role model to, even if you don't think you're a role model. So with that said, Mr. President, I want to acknowledge many of my colleagues who have came and apologized on his behalf and said that this is not the way that we should be handling business here in the legislature. So again, I appreciate it, and I thank you for this moment to speak.
Thank you. Next bill.
Senate Bill 33 by Senator White.
Return it. Okay. Senator White, you want to say a few words before you return it?
Mr. President, members, I just, from the incident this morning, I think Senator Barrow did a good job. He did apologize, but nobody apologized to Mayor Broome. Mayor Broome and I ran against each other in 2016, a very tough race. She ended up beating me by 3 or 4 percentage points for mayor president. But I never talked to her like that, and she never talked to me like that. We've always had the utmost respect for each other. So I would hope as we go forward that we remember to show respect for each other, whether we're in competition, whether we're passionate about one of our bills, because nobody gets any more passionate about your legislation than me, but you've never seen me cuss one of you or talk to you like that. Thank you.
Thank you.